All right, we are here with Gabriel Cardona, and we're going to talk about all things Bitcoin Cash, SLP tokens, and the recent event he was just at in Wyoming, and he's here to tell us all about it. So, Gabriel, how are you doing?
I am excellent. Thank you so much for having me. It's nice to finally talk. I'm a big fan of your work. I think you are a meme warrior of the highest caliber, so it's great to finally connect.
That's great. We all have to do our part. We all have our certain skill sets. But yeah, I've been a large fan of all that you're doing as well. I think it's a great contribution, as well as it's not only doing solid work, but it's adding to the conversation of what exactly Bitcoin Cash is and what it can offer. On that note, I think what is most appropriate to talk about right now is we're coming off the heels of the big Wyoming blockchain conference that just happened.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk to us a little bit about how that experience was for you?
Sure. So the University of Wyoming is in Laramie, Wyoming. And last year, one of the guys at Bitcoin.com, Gerald Fabreau, met a woman named Caitlin Long at an event in New York. And Caitlin worked on Wall Street for like 25 years or something like that, but she grew up in Wyoming. So she's got like lots of love for Wyoming. And so to kind of step back, I mentioned this in my presentation. I've said it quite a lot, but it's just surprising to me. Wyoming is like very, very progressive. They had the very first woman voter and the very first woman's governor, and they created the notion of the LLC. So they're super progressive and they're super dynamic. And they are able to basically move very quickly when they want to. So they have been drafting all these bills, Caitlin Long's team and this guy, Representative Tyler Windholm, and they've got a whole team called the Wyoming Blockchain Coalition. And basically just to make Wyoming the blockchain valley of the United States. So I said this in my talk yesterday. In New York, there's this notion of the bit license. It was created by Ben Lusky, who used to be on the Ripple. When Coinbase theirs, it took like a year, and they had a whole team of lawyers. It was expensive. Contrast that with Wyoming, where they're doing all kinds of law. They created a new class of LLC. They enabled corporations and politicians to write corporate records to the blockchain. Utility tokens are exempt from money transmitter laws, and they're treated as cash within the state. They have an entirely new type of bank. There's a bunch that's just scratching the surface. So anyway, that's just setting the stage. The caliber of people here is absolutely outrageous. I travel nonstop. I literally travel full time and go to blockchain events all around the world, and people talk about what's happening here. So, when you're pulling into Laramie out of Denver, you see on your phone, you're like 10 miles away and you're still out in the country and you're like, where am I headed? And you pull into a little tiny town, and then you pull onto the university, and it's just outrageously nice. So, that just gives you a sense of what's happening here. They value their engineering and they value their university incredibly highly. They've got an outrageous caliber of people here. There's a lot of wealth here. The largest concentration of billionaires in the United States is in Jackson Hole. So all that to say, they're doing big things here. So then they have this hackathon, and yes, last year's was the first, and this is the second one, and I'm sure now that it's going to be a yearly thing. So I would suggest anybody watching this make plans now to attend the next year. This year's caliber of people was pretty high. Obviously, Caitlin was there. Pomp was there. Trace Meyer was there. Peter McCormick was there. Of course, I was there. The creator of Cardano was there. The CEO of Dash was there. There were so many people there. A bunch of guys from Cardano, and then a bunch of people I'm forgetting, and I apologize to anybody who sees this. I don't mean to insult you. There were some serious, amazing people there. So, $179,000 in prizes. Last year, all three gubernatorial candidates were there. So it's been amazing, man. I travel all around the world, and this is one to take note of and one to attend. Like, again, I'll say it and mean it. If you're paying attention, make plans now to attend this event next year, because it's one of the best events in the United States when it comes to blockchain.
Great. And there's definitely an emphasis that I saw between being agnostic in terms of what coin, because we've seen a lot of the conference ecosystem develop sort of into, this is for Ethereum, or this is just for BTC, or this is just for Bitcoin Cash, and so on and so forth. So this seemed like sort of an oddity to see, like, everyone kind of coming together and being just pro crypto and seeing how we can find commonalities. So can you comment on that?
Yeah, you nailed it. So like one of the things they do that's interesting here that's unique, and I didn't, for some reason I forgot they did it last year and I didn't have the foresight this year. So unfortunately we did not have a Bitcoin Cash challenge. All of the different coins, which usually have some company backing them or some, consensus or some organization, something, they all issued some type of challenge. So, Cardano had $5,000 for this challenge and $3,000 for this challenge. So a lot of the different tokens and coins will show up and they'll say, we're dedicating $25,000 to the weekend. We've got it across these 5 different challenges. We're wanting to see what people can do exciting with these different aspects of our platform. And so that's pretty cool. It gives everybody a chance to come out here and invest a little bit of money into either some R&D they want to figure out, or maybe something they want to shine some marketing juice onto. But to comment more on what you're saying about being agnostic, so I've been throwing around this term, the Tocambrian explosion, and I actually came up with that term last year here at the hackathon because it was the first event I had been to where I actually did see EOS and Tron and Ethereum and Bitcoin Cash tokens, and it was the first of the year, like you're saying, it was the first one I had been to which wasn't siloed down to a specific tribe or specific community, and that was where I kind of had that vision of like, wow, there's a Tocambrian explosion happening right now. There are tokens just exploding on all these different platforms, and some of them are just going to thrive and some of them are going to die, and it's going to be very interesting to see. So yeah, again, I think it just goes to the sense that they have a really, really high caliber of engineering department here, as well as legal, team. So they get it at a deep level, the potential of the blockchain. And I don't think they're very tribal in that sense. So it was cool to see just all of the different things happening on the blockchain. So I said it yesterday on Twitter, and I mean it, man, like the greatest minds of our generation are working on the blockchain. Really, there is just so much happening. And it's not just engineering. You know what I mean? Like, the best memesters in the world are on the blockchain. The best artists in the world are on the blockchain. The best engineers, the best project managers, like the highest caliber of people, in my opinion. And of course, I see the world through the lens of somebody who lives and breathes the blockchain. But like the highest caliber of people out there right now are working on the blockchain, and it's the hugest opportunity to have an impact, an oversized impact, because there's just not enough great people to go around. And so, yeah, it's nice to be here. It's refreshing to just see all the things that are happening on the other blockchains, and it drives me because it reminds me, it really reminds me that from the Bitcoin Cash perspective, which is how I roll, we need to be very innovative if we want to remain competitive, because there's just so much amazing stuff happening. It's really shocking. If you just take a deep dive down the Cardano rabbit hole or down the Tron rabbit hole, there's some pretty cool stuff happening. So it's like, if we want to remain competitive and we want businesses and developers to adopt our platform, we've got to push the envelope continuously because other teams are, and I want to appreciate and acknowledge that.
Yeah, right on. There's sort of that open source ethos of, understanding what's going on around you and sort of picking and grabbing from, what's valuable from out, even though it's not your sort of closed loop that you operate in. So I think the agnosticism there is great.
We've got a lag, so I apologize if I have to cut you off when I want to comment on something. So I'm sorry, but yeah, I think I like what Steve Jobs said, and I believe he got it from Picasso. Good artists copy, great artists steal. And I don't mean that in the sense of stealing like somebody's intellectual property. I would never do that. But in the context of finding what works for other people and making it your own. So, good artists copy, but great artists steal. Great artists go out and look and see what really works. What is the germ of the idea, which is flowering into this great thing, and taking that and making it your own. And so, yeah, that's the open source hacker ethos, where you look around and you find what's happening and you make it your own.
Yeah. So can you speak on if there were any cool ideas to emerge from some of those conversations, or maybe more directly in like hackathon, if anyone had like a cool thing that they worked on? Did you see anything like that?
Yeah, so there let me see what runs through my mind. So I think the coolest one, it was the one I voted for to win, and it did end up winning, so I think it deserved to win, was called, what do I have? I have it on my notes here. So it's called Sovereign Keep. So basically, from my day job, helping companies tokenize assets. So I said this during my talk yesterday, and everybody's like, what does that mean? So during my talk yesterday, I said that my team has helped tokenize nearly $250 billion on the Bitcoin Cash blockchain. And that's a big statement. And what does that mean? Well, that means that we do consulting deals. A big, huge part of what I'm doing at my day job right now, every single day, is just business development. So We just meet with companies and we help hold their hand and on-ramp them into our token ecosystem and help them develop their tokenomics and launch their token and do their crowd sale. And so far, at the height of the prices, now you know how it is whenever a token launches, it pops and then it goes down. So it's probably not worth $250 billion today, so I'm overshooting that. But I'm giving you the height of the price because I want that number to pop, because I want people to kind of appreciate that, whoa, there is something happening here. Across all the different tokens we've helped tokenize so far, at their peak, it was around $200 or so million. And that's just what we've done so far on my team in Bitcoin Cash over the last few months. So that is simply to say that there really is something special about tokens. And so the question is, how can you do this and not get tripped up legally? Because there's big money at stake and you don't want to screw up. And a lot of the people who launched ICOs in 2017, many of them are tripping up now because they either didn't deliver a product or they have a security and they thought it was a utility, and there's just a whole world there. Like, there's an absolute rabbit hole of legality that concerns when it comes to launching tokens. So the question is, where in the world, literally, can I launch a token and make it happen? And for each team, it has to be something unique. But in the context of an American company, Wyoming is the obvious answer. So literally, Charles Hoskinson, I hope I pronounced his last name correctly, the guy who created Cardano, one of the original dudes on Ethereum, absolute wizard in my opinion, is the creator of IOHK, right? So Input Output Hong Kong. They're the ones who are the team behind Cardano. They literally relocated, man, from Hong Kong to Wyoming. Like, that alone should give you a sense of, like, there is really something happening here. Last year when I was here, I believe it was Active Ether, but it was a big company that was here last year, was relocating from NYC, literally from NYC to Jackson Hole. So it's like that, people put their money where their mouth is. So anyway, let me get back on track here. What were some cool things that were created? The thing that won, which I thought was very cool, was basically there are all these laws right now that rule if you are based in Wyoming. And that's a little tricky when you're launching a web service, because it's like, where is your server even located? If it's on Amazon cloud, who knows, unless you specifically co-located in a region. There's a lot of stuff there. So this team was called Sovereign Keep, and basically it was like a one-click solution to launch your apps infrastructure in Wyoming, basically. And I don't exactly know how they did IP addresses. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but that was part of it. So basically being able to launch your app and make sure that it was able to be exempt from money transmitter laws and treated as cash within Wyoming, and there's a bunch of them. And then the other part of it was, so as I mentioned, in 77, Wyoming created the LLC. And I've done 3 startups so far in my career, and they've all done LLCs out of Delaware. So, but Wyoming actually created it. So now they have this new class of LLC where you can create a parent LLC, and you can create like an infinite number of children LLCs, and every single purchaser of your token can be its own LLC, and every LLC can be firewalled from all the other ones. So this Sovereign Keep, not only was it like a one-click launch your own infrastructure within Wyoming kind of thing, but it also was the tokenized LLC component. So that won first place. There's a guy here named Aaron I met last year. He was here as well this year. He won second place. I believe his Twitter handle was Web3 Developer. They did like, what was it? It was like a what was it? Fantasy sports, that's what it was. So basically using like NFT tokens, you can become, because collectibles are huge. So Consensus, who is like one of the companies behind Ethereum, was here at a challenge around NFTs, trying to basically do, because the concept is popped in the market one time with CryptoKitty. I think everybody is kind of looking for the next big NFT, because we all appreciate that it's going to be huge, but nobody knows what it is yet. So collectibles and cards and those kind of things really shine in context. So being able to do like what's it called, fantasy sports as tokenized, so that was one that place. More engineering centric things. So Cardano, which is just a really, really interesting platform. I was actually digging out on Cardano hard before I did Bitbox. So before I did Bitbox, I was just looking around like, I want to work on something huge. And Cardano was one of the platforms I considered. But I haven't looked at it at all, literally, in over a year and a half, because I've been doing Bitbox. So it was cool to deep dive on that ecosystem again. And what's really cool is they have multiple smart contract languages. And so their challenges were for people to write stuff with their smart contract languages. And that was kind of cool to see. And then the one I'm building, and I'm going to launch it tonight, I'm literally deploying it right now, right when you called, is called oracles.cash. It's not live yet. It will be by the end of this evening. And basically it is a platform for launching oracles on Bitcoin Cash. So oracles are just incredibly powerful. And all of the stuff is there. You know, we have there. Bitcoin Cash is such an incredibly compelling API right now. Like if I was an engineer and I was simply just looking over the ecosystem, Bitcoin Cash has so much to offer. It genuinely is incredibly undervalued from a mindset perspective. So I'm trying to explore all of these different non-fungible financial service providers. And one of them is just oracles. Oracles are so powerful. You can create prediction markets. You can create gambling, online gambling that's trustless. I mean, you can do so much. So oracles.cash will be live by tonight. It's 100% open source. Of course, I hope people will use it to launch a platform like it. It's got a back end where you can spin up your own data and sign it with your key and publish it. And then it's got a front end, which is a smart contract written in Cash script. And then it's got the TypeScript file to basically compile it and run it and create a wager based on the price of BCH. So basically, I set up a data stream where I fetch the price of BCH from our backend index.bitcoin.com, and I sign it with our cryptographic key. And I like 4 bits are the block size, 4 bytes are the block size, 4 bytes are the price, and then I sign it and publish it. And so that's all live. It all works. I just got to publish it live to the web right now. And so that's what I built, oracles.cash. And then there was a bunch of other stuff. I would say the breakdown was out there. Cardano had a good presence here, but you know, Charles was here and they were throwing down quite a bit of money on challenges. Dash's CEO was here. They also had a good presence. Bitcoin Cash was here. BTC was here, but not from an engineering perspective. But like I mentioned, Peter McCormick and those guys were here. But so those were some of the things that were built. I don't want to ramble on forever. I want you to cut me off at some point if you have stuff to say.
Sure. No, all that was super valuable for people to check out, especially the oracles, for them all to make sure they see what you're doing over on that department. But yeah, it sounds like it was a really great energy going on. There was obviously the first place winner had that Wyoming connection that a lot of people should think about. But yeah, you get into sort of, I guess, what was really going right at this conference. And so perhaps if there's a takeaway, if there's a lesson to learn for perhaps future Bitcoin Cash conferences or ones that are open to Bitcoin Cash and other currencies, you know, what is the thing that worked here that other conferences in the future should do?
Yeah, well, one thing they're doing right here is the community level support. So, you know, this was literally at the University of Wyoming. They have an absolutely outrageously beautiful building. I mean, the best I've ever been to in terms of hackathons. It has this huge central atrium that is literally open for 4 floors. And then around each of the floors, there's just office rooms and cubby holes and whiteboards and just beautiful facilities. So, and then, you know, $179,000 in prizes doesn't hurt. And having the candidates for the governor here doesn't hurt. So I think community support, and that's something that's challenging to do, and it's something we struggle with every day in any open source project I've ever been part of is community. You know, engineering is the easy part. We're smart people and we solve problems. Community is the tough part, right? Because people have egos and not everybody always feels like they're valued, and you know, there's all the things that go into group dynamics. So number one is community support is big. And if you can get that happening in your area, I think that is how you can cause a renaissance in the micro scale, right? So how can we cause like a renaissance at the macro scale around the world by having people like Caitlin Long and Representative Lindholm who focus so intensely on the micro scale and cause such renaissance locally that it just causes people like myself to fly from across the world and sing its praises. And then also there is just having an open mind to other tribes and ecosystems. I think that it's like a fine balance to walk, right? Because maximalism is the point I'm addressing here. So in one sense, it's like you really want to believe in your tribe and you really want to believe in your thing so much that you dedicate your whole trip to it. At the same time, you want to be sensitive and sane enough to realize that there are other things and that there's always going to be other things. And so it's got to be this there's always going to be like this power law distribution where there is like 1 or 2 or 3 big winners in the fat head, and then there's like a long tail of everybody else. And then that diversity across that whole thing is where it all is. And so I think from our perspective in a Bitcoin Cash or people throwing future hackathons, I think it actually helps to have a cross-pollination of different ecosystems, because it's really good to learn what other ecosystems are doing, because it'll help drive you from an innovation perspective. Like there's a lot that for example, Tron and EOS are doing to try and do digital cash that I wasn't aware of until the past few months. So here I am living in Bitcoin Cash land, working on digital cash all day. It would help me to know that there are other ecosystems solving that problem in their own way. What can I learn from them? What are they doing better? What are we doing better? That kind of thing. So number one, community support. Can you get your local businesses to donate money? Can you get your local legislators to pass laws? Like I went to Jeju Island last year, and they're similar to Wyoming. They're a semi-autonomous zone in Korea, and they are also able to move super quick, and they're drafting laws to make themselves the blockchain of the Pacific, blockchain crypto valley of the Pacific. And so if you can get the local business and legislators on board and local support, if you can find like those 1 or 2 or 3 block stars that live it and breathe it locally to cause the micro renaissance. And then if you can be open to having input from people from outside of your tribe, I think that's also valuable as well. Simply because, you know, the beauty of it all is in this notion of this mixing pot. And so I think like one of the things I've been trying to do so we've learned a lot from Ethereum. A lot of the developer tooling we've created at Bitcoin.com on my team has been informed by stuff that exists in Ethereum, because I was working on Ethereum before Bitcoin Cash. And when I started working on Bitcoin Cash, I wanted to reproduce a lot of that workflow. And so in a positive way, that has informed us so much so that when we created our own smart contract language, we literally created it to be similar to what they had so that we can have a bridge. And it's the same way whenever you're dealing with Tron. So Tron's smart language is literally, smart contract language is literally Solidity. So the same smart contracts work in Ethereum, they work in Solidity, and a similar syntax will work in Bitcoin Cash. So I think there's just a ton of value in being able to be informed by other ecosystems. And I think that's probably that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely this need to be more ecumenical with the other coins. For one example, like DevCon that's going to be going on, CoinSpice is actually helping partner with a meetup between BCH and ETH
Yeah, that's
devs.
Awesome.
And
I'll be
just
there,
fostering nice. Oh, great.
Yeah.
So yeah, fostering good relationships there. And as you know, you use you know, that catchphrase, the Tocambrian explosion. You know, I'm starting to see that there's also like a new sort of you know, potential event coming that's very big. You have maybe the ETH migration that is potentially going to happen, because when you look at all the cool things that are getting developed on Bitcoin Cash from SLPs and tokens and smart contracts, I think there's a real there's sort of a real dilemma that some ETH devs are finding themselves in, where I think a lot of them went over to ETH because they saw it as Bitcoin plus all these enhanced features. But now, and not to throw any diss at what the fantastic people over in ETH are trying to do when they think about scaling and the complex solutions involved in that, but as they move into sort of things that are more novel and more experimental, like proof of stake or other scaling solutions they're considering, it's sort of getting away from what that original conception of maybe just an app developer going and saying, hey, well, I wanted Bitcoin plus tokens. And now you're kind of removing the Bitcoin part of it. But where you look at Bitcoin Cash today, and it's like, wow, this is actually Bitcoin plus tokens. Imagine that. So How do you think about a potential like big Ethereum migration to Bitcoin Cash?
Yes. So maybe about 2 months ago, Vitalik put out a paper, which I posted the link. It's around if you Google it. And it was super high level, and it wasn't too long, but it was something basically like, our scaling solutions are taking longer than I thought they would. As a short-term solution, we could potentially use Bitcoin Cash as like a data layer. Here is how I propose to do that. Boom. And so I have been hoping to find the time after this event, literally as I fly back to San Francisco from here. I leave for Osaka for DevCon, and I don't know when it is. It's on the 8th, so in about a week and a half or so. I'm hoping to have time to prototype the Bitcoin Cash side of that proposal, so that when I'm in Osaka, I can hopefully meet up with Vitalik. Literally, I have a couple other connections, Virgil from the Ethereum Foundation, and then a couple other guys as well, if I can't connect with Vitalik personally. But I'm hoping that whenever I go to Osaka, I can literally be like, we've prototyped the Bitcoin Cash side of that solution you proposed, if you guys want to try and make any moves on that. So I think there's that. And again, like I said, we've done a lot. You know, we forked MetaMask into Badger Wallet. We have CashCrypt, which is similar to Solidity. Bitbox is similar to Truffle. You know, we've done a lot to mimic that workflow. And I think fundamentally there are some things that Bitcoin Cash offers that Ethereum will not be able to offer, and vice versa. So again, I always say they complement each other so well if you allow them to play to their strengths. Pardon me, play to their strengths. So this idea we're exploring of non-custodial financial services. So I really this weekend I connected then with this guy I met here, whose name I'm spacing on, Jared LM, I believe, something like that. I apologize, Jared, who is creating like a non-custodial app on Ethereum. And so I want to start this dialogue because, as far as I understand it, and I really want to know if I'm wrong here, there is a class of applications that Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin derivatives, things that have UTXO models basically, are able to do, which account-based models, which is what Ethereum are, and Tron, are unable to do. And even though there is this big revolution of DeFi, decentralized finance, and it's happening in Ethereum, so you have things like this whole stablecoin revolution, and there's so much cool stuff happening there. So even though there is a financial revolution happening in Ethereum, from what I understand, there is an entire class of applications called non-custodial financial services, which Ethereum can never do. And the reason is this, and this is as I understand it at a high level, and I really want to start the dialogue here to flesh this out, because I believe this is very, very important. This might be the very heart of the very heart of what is possible on both ecosystems. In Ethereum, whenever you create a smart contract and you give it money, basically it has the private keys. It can sign transactions. In Bitcoin Cash land, that's not the way. There's non-custodial financial service providers that can create these smart contracts and generate these transactions, but they never have your keys. They're non-custodial. And so they pass them back to Badger Wallet or Electron Cash or in Cointext or whatever to sign. You control your keys, and then you are able to send the transaction. And the difference between custodial and non-custodial is the difference between KYC and non-KYC. So again, this is the dialogue I'm trying to start right now, because I believe that even though there is an amazing amount of stuff happening with DeFi and Ethereum, I believe that once we articulate and flesh out this non-custodial financial services space, there is going to be a huge wave of innovation that happens there, and that a lot of these people who are doing DeFi and Ethereum are going to be drawn to Bitcoin Cash for the very reason that you can't do these types of contracts in Ethereum. So again, I'm humbly admitting that I could be wrong there, and I'm trying to create the dialogue with people who know more about Ethereum than myself. Because what I will say is that Ethereum is general purpose. So there's this notion of a Turing complete programming language, and that just means is it general purpose or not? Effectively, can it do loops and recursion, those kinds of things? There's actually a more formal definition, which I will not brutalize here. So any computer scientists who are watching at the moment, there is in fact a halting problem, which is what defines something as whether or not it's Turing complete. You can Google it and get a better description than I personally will be able to give you right now. But effectively, like most modern languages are Turing complete, and script, the scripting language of BTC and BCH, are not. They can't do loops. They can't do recursion. So the language of Ethereum it can do loops and recursion. So some people say, well, Ethereum is just more powerful than Bitcoin Cash because Bitcoin Cash can't even do loops. But like, for example, I went to a talk for this language called Marlowe, which is a new language launching on Cardano. And, Cardano is modern and it's advanced like Ethereum. And they chose purposely to make Marlowe Turing incomplete because they're doing financial smart contracts. And so that really reinforces what people have been saying for years about script, which is the reason it's not smart. Turing complete is because it does smart contracts, which are financial, and you don't want infinite loops and bugs that you never envisioned to creep into your financial smart contracts, right? That's not something that would be not something you would want, obviously. So anyway, the point simply being that there is a lot that Bitcoin Cash can do. Bitcoin Cash really is the fulfillment of the Bitcoin vision. And this is where you start falling down that rabbit hole where you find yourself like a religious zealot saying, Bitcoin Cash is the real Bitcoin. And I swear I try and never do that. But I understand the people who do it. You know what I'm saying? Because the fulfillment of what should have happened, 6 years ago, whenever Vitalik left to create Ethereum in 2014. Really, we should have just scaled the block and tried tokens out then. All this stuff 6 years ago, right? So I wanted to do, but yeah, to bring it back to your question, yes, I think that as we articulate these non-custodial financial services, and as we show that, hey man, there's a class of DeFi applications, which is where all the juice is right now in Ethereum. Let's mind ourselves. There's a whole class of DeFi applications that Bitcoin Cash does better, or simply Ethereum cannot do. I do believe there's going to be a lot of Ethereum developers migrate over to Bitcoin Cash, and that's why we're trying to create a similar developer workflow so that it's an easy bridge.
Got it. So the central point here to boil it down as to why Bitcoin might be better for that, and Bitcoin Cash in particular, than Ethereum, because the loops within Ethereum actually open up a wider risk vector that you don't want to have in financial contracts, whereas not having those actually kind of protect you from, you know, endless loops and who knows what can happen with a potential bug down the road. So that's really interesting point to make there for sure for folks. And yeah, as you were harping on, you know, why Bitcoin Cash really tries to bring back a lot of the original energy and ideas behind Bitcoin in the early days, especially with the idea that Vitalik was sort of going off and the rest of the people with him to create Ethereum, because there was limitations on what could have been done with Bitcoin. So now with that being said too, like we have this idea that Bitcoin is about money and it's only money. But at the same time, you know, if you really get down to the heart of it, Bitcoin's primary innovation is censorship resistant value transfer. And I think when we start to think about SLPs and tokens and smart contracts, we really need to underline that word value transfer, because it's not just money or, you know, cash that we're kind of enabling here. We're enabling all forms of value transfers. And so that's where it's not just, hey, we're not going after the money market. We're also going after every single market that has some sort of value transfer. So obviously stocks, bonds, but the further and further you go, you get, you know, real estate transactions, you get in-game, like video game currencies, you get, you know, corporate gift points. So you have all these realms. And so really you just have to identify where are all these areas of value transfers that are sort of outside of the realm of what we consider just pure money transactions. And then once you actually analyze all that, add it all up, you see, wow, Bitcoin Cash actually has a wider market potential now than just trying to go after, you know, whether it's the market for gold, which some coins are going after, or it's the money for just sort of all paper currency. This is what really gets exciting when you think about this. So what are your comments on that?
Yeah, so I mean, you nailed it. And so that's the point. So it really is like amazing. So many things that Satoshi got right. Like it's worth stepping back and just like admiring, like, wow, Satoshi, you nailed it so on so many levels. And one of the things that he or she or they got right was making the first token, if you will, money. And because that incentivizes miners through Coinbase reward to validate transactions and secure the network. So, you know, right out of the gate, there's this incentive alignment to where people are willing to contribute their computation resources to create this thing out of thin air that all of a sudden has value because it has digital scarcity and all this computation behind it. And so, boom, nailed it. And then the idea of tokenization, being able to take everything we love about the blockchain, peer-to-peer, decentralized, electronic, distributed, and start applying it to real world and virtual goods. And so, like, perfect example is one of the tokens we helped launch, which is the ACD token. So ACD is Airline Cargo Direct. They're a sub corporation of ANA, which is a huge multinational corporation in Japan. And they have like all kinds of plans what they're doing with this ACD token. I'm not even sure what all of it is on the public roadmap, so I'm not entirely sure, but they're going to be accepting it at point of sale locations and doing integrations with video games and like all kinds of stuff. And all of that stuff is extra on top of the cash layer, right? So it's like you got the cash layer, but then you have all of this other stuff. So the thing that I think the biggest thing that I would ask of the Bitcoin Cash community is that we maintain an open mind because of the nature of the birth of Bitcoin Cash, because we came from a very contentious fork. And because there's this extreme hyper focus on cash, from day one, when we've tried to introduce tokens, there's been a big knee-jerk reaction from a lot of people. And we've had to like walk out the conversation that, no, man, tokens don't compete with cash, tokens complement cash, and tokens can act as a channel for capital to enter our ecosystem. In the same way, there's been $28 billion in token sales on Ethereum, and all of those companies that launched on those ICOs are now doing Ethereum development, and they have Ethereum infrastructure and ecosystem and all of that stuff all of that can happen in Bitcoin Cash if these companies raise money on tokenize on Bitcoin Cash, and then they have building out Bitcoin Cash applications and wallets and infrastructure and cloud stuff. And so really we want tokenization. And so what I've been saying is that, like, if we do not treat tokens and smart contracts as first-class citizens in our ecosystem, we will not remain innovative. So that's the biggest question, the ask that I would ask of the Bitcoin Cash community, is that we have an open mind, and that we realize that cash is our asset, and that we need to treat smart contracts and tokens as first-class citizens in the context that they do not sacrifice or compromise anything about cash. So I know that that is a very sensitive topic, and I am very aware of that every time I mention that. And I want to, again, reiterate, I'm not saying that we want to compete with cash. Cash is our value add, but we also need to treat tokens and smart contracts as first-class citizens in our ecosystem. For sure,
for sure. And I think no matter what someone can say about a particular stablecoin, which you brought up earlier, I think there's overwhelming evidence to suggest that the market is demanding the concept of a stablecoin.
Oh, I love stablecoins.
Yeah, and especially as we're in this early adopter period of, like, there's low liquidity, there's high volatility, and we constantly have to run up against that that problem as we try to get people to use this as money. So if you introduce the smart contracts and the tokens, and that enables an ecosystem of stable coins to compete for, like, who's the best custodian of the stable coin, that is a great sort of on-ramp into a future where there is more stability. So if you want, you can use the stable coins, but basically the stable coins allowed for, like, the temporary stability, but while still using the actual core use case and tool that is the value transfer, the verb, not the noun. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I agree. So stablecoins to me are similar, although obviously they're different functionalities. So I'm not clumping them together in terms of what they do, but they're similar to me to writing to the blockchain. So, you know, there's been this continuous sort of debate back and forth in Bitcoin Cash land about stablecoins and about writing to the blockchain. And, you know, whenever this goes way back to the BTC days, whenever they literally, for a brief moment in time, decreased op-return data carriage size from 80 bytes to 40 bytes, and that ended up shutting down a lot of the Cambrian explosion on BTC. And whenever we enabled it from 80 bytes to 223 or 224, I forget what it is, that's what enabled us to have tokens, as well as things like Memo BCH. So to me, to go back to what you said on the previous point, what is Bitcoin Cash? Bitcoin Cash is censorship resistant digital cash, or digital transfer value for the internet nation, right? So we are, the censorship resistant part is a very, very important part of that sentence. And it would be easy to leave that off and just say we're digital cash for the internet, but we're more than that. We're censorship resistant digital cash. And that's a huge part of it, because the truth is that we live in a total information awareness society, and the possibility of a police state is very real. And so the time to cultivate censorship resistant networks are before you need them, because when you need them, it's too late, right? So the time for us to do this all is now. And it's not just money, it's also social networks. So the analogy I use is the Bitcoin handle on Twitter. Now, a lot of people speak like they know what happened with that Twitter handle. None of us do. Maybe some people behind the scenes do, but let's operate for a moment like we don't know. So under the presumption we don't know, you know, their prerogative. It may be against the terms of service, but whatever. Or it got taken back by Twitter, which is a totally possible opportunity. I'm not saying it happened, but you know, Jack is a huge investor in Lightning Network, and he's shown no love for BCH in the past. So it's entirely possible that it happened. I'm not saying it did. I'm not suggesting it did. But the point being that would never happen in a world of a censorship resistant social network like Memo BCH, because on Memo BCH, your social network, your identity is tied to your private keys. And there is no central third party that can come to you and say, give me your account, Gabriel, or Bitcoin, I'm taking it back and handing it over to the other tribe. That would never be able to happen. And there is no party that the government can come to and say, shut down Snowden's account, or shut down somebody talking about the war in Iraq's account. That can't happen on a censorship resistant social network. So writing to the blockchain is incredibly valuable, and people want to do it. And so to me, as a systems engineer, as somebody who designs systems to be used by people, let's just accept that even if it's something we don't want to do, even if me personally, I hate the idea of writing to the blockchain, it's like freedom of speech. freedom of speech only matters if you're willing to defend somebody's speech that you don't like, right? It's not enough if you defend freedom of speech when you agree with it. You have to actually say, you know, I don't like what he's saying, but he has the right to say it, and I'm willing to stand up for that. So that's the way it works with permissionless. Permissionless is only permissionless when you back people doing stuff you don't agree with. And if you really believe in the market with a capital M, then it's okay if they do crap you don't believe with, because it's going to fail anyway, because that's the way the market works. And if it's a brilliant idea and you were blindsided to it, then the market's going to reward it, and then that's great. And so to me, I'm like, hey man, let 1,000 flowers bloom. Let everybody try it. And if it's a stupid idea, it's not going to work. And it's obvious that people want to write to the Bitcoin Cash blockchain. So therefore, we should give them the primitives and the tools they need to do that in a safe way. And yes, obviously there are concerns about people uploading inappropriate pictures and stuff like that. Yes, that's a real concern. But we have to figure out solutions to that. Saying, no, it can't be done, and trying to prohibit, saying, decentralize the web. They're encouraging people to upload pictures to their web. So how are they solving the thing of people uploading inappropriate pictures? There must be a solution, because they're advocating people doing it. So my point being, it's the same thing with stablecoins. There seem to be these people who think that stablecoins are not possible, when I would say, well, they seem to be possible enough to where DAI and a couple other things are happening that are clearly compelling on some other level. Are they the perfect solution that ends all things ever, forever? No, because that's not the way these things work, but they're good enough for now. And so a big part of what I do is on-ramp merchants into BCH, and a huge problem is just volatility, man. It's like these people aren't into it for the religious reason. They just need another way to accept money, and they can't be exposed to volatility at the point of sale. Their money going up or down 10% in a day just doesn't work for them, so they need to be able to convert immediately to fiat, or they need a stable coin. So to me, it's like, let's just provide them the solution they need, instead of trying to say, that'll never work, or it's clear that the market is needing this solution. Let's step forward and provide it. So yeah, I'm a huge advocate of stable coins. I think we absolutely need that solution. There is already one, which is the Honest Coin, Honest Coin, I believe. I worked with the team to help them create it. It's a really cool coin. It's the best one out in our ecosystem right now. I would like it's sort of the old school model where it's backed by assets, and I don't mean old school in the wrong way. That came off the wrong way. I apologize if they see this. I didn't mean that as an insult. It's more like the stablecoin version 1.0, which was like the Tether model, where basically we just put a bunch of assets in a bank account and we issue one-to-one, and that's perfectly fine. Like if you're able to do audits of your bank account and you've got $1 million in there and you issue 1 million Gabriel coins, that's good to go. The problem is when it's not auditable. And so that's why we have version 2, which are algorithmically derived stable coins. And now we're talking. Now we're letting computer science and mathematics do the talking. And that's what this whole revolution is all about. Money, which is not backed by the state, which is instead backed by computer science and mathematics. So it makes sense to have a stable coin component of that. So I'm a huge component of it. And I hope that we have a huge stable coin ecosystem in Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah. And as we wrap up here, so coming off this conference and all of the work that you're doing with SLP tokens, where do you see the next like 3 months to, in the short term, and then let's say like a year, 2 years in the long term?
Yeah. So I've got my, the term right now is the Tocambrian explosion. And so, like that's the play right now. We have, I think today at this moment, we probably have 4,300 tokens on BCH. Most of them are the long tail. They're just people creating an emoji token and sending them around to their friends to explore. But some of them have value. I myself have worked with teams to tokenize some serious value. Some meme tokens. Spice token is one of the most meaningful tokens out there. To me, memetics is like huge, dude. Memetic warfare is huge. That's the name of the game. We live in this time where it's the zeitgeist and there's this endless amount of noise. And so being able to take an idea and pierce through the noise with a signal and plant the idea in somebody's brain and have it flower as their own idea and then spread like a virus, that is the essence of memetic warfare. And that's the time we live in right now. And so being able to tokenize memes, being able to add some type of economic layer, it goes back to kind of like the Dogecoin thing. But to me, Spice is so much better. Spice is one of the most important coins out there and tokens out there. And it's appropriate, in my opinion, that it's the first sort of token to emerge organically, not driven by a corporation in the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem, because it's spicy. Just everything that it represents, it's so appropriate for the time and place. I love Spice, huge fan of Spice. So I think that like right now it's the Tocambrian explosion. If I were not working at Bitcoin.com, so if I were not already doing what I'm doing, I would do a startup in Bitcoin Cash. I would launch a token. I would do it on our exchange. So I'm not just shilling Bitcoin.com's exchange. I really do believe in our roadmap. Like, we're really trying to do something huge here. We're supporting SLP tokens, and we have our own exchange token. So if you want to launch your own token, you can now do it on our exchange. We have a platform for doing that. That's SLP. And we have BCH trading pairs, so the whole thing. So if I was on the outside right now, I would launch a token. I would raise capital, because right now is the time to raise money, because the next chapter is what I call the token wars. And so basically it's just all about Darwinian evolution, and that is survival of the fittest. So every one of these tokens, think about Spice. Spice raised $1 million or so. I don't know exactly what it's worth today, but it's a non-trivial amount of money. It's not a crazy fortune, but it's non-trivial. There are people out there holding Spice, presumably. And so these people now are able to do what they want to do, and that's develop focus on this ecosystem. And I know that because that's what happened with me with my thing. I invested in Bitcoin Cash, and it allowed me to step back and focus completely on the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem. So I suspect the exact same thing is going to happen right now. Chapter 1 is the Cambrian explosion. People are going to start raising capital on BCH. I'm sure of it. We're going to see a bunch of money raised on BCH. And then the next chapter is going to be the Darwinian evolution, where it's just going to be all of these tokens competing against each other. And so what I'm advocating at Bitcoin.com, and what I would advocate to anybody right now, you and anybody who has any type of sort of presence in our ecosystem, right now is the time to, and I don't mean this in a shallow way, right now is the time to capitalize on your market position and to get a war chest, whatever that means. And it doesn't necessarily mean money, but it could mean money. But right now is the time to capitalize on your market position and to get a war chest and to position yourself for this next set of waves, which is about to break, because everything is aligned. And all of the tech is there to build these crazy disruptive non-custodial financial services. All of this money is happening in DeFi across Ethereum. It's just waiting to happen in Bitcoin Cash. So the teams that show up and do it are going to make a lot of money. And money doesn't have to be shallow. Money can be quite rich. And I don't mean that like in a cheesy way. Money can be, can be very expressive, and money can be very meaningful in your life. And it doesn't have to be shallow to quest after money. We all are driven by money. So the companies which come in right now and execute very quick in the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem are going to be the next big wave of startups. So what I expect is some new brands and companies to emerge. So for example, one that immediately comes to mind is Honey Points. So that's JB, who used to be our head of our wallet team, and then Alfonso, who used to be our project manager. They both recently checked out at Bitcoin.com. I think they're both champions. They're launching like a loyalty points thing on Bitcoin Cash. And so that's a perfect example in my mind. There's about to be a wave of startups which are tokenized on Bitcoin Cash. They're going to raise a lot of money. That's the token Cambrian explosion. And then they're going to compete against each other. That's the token wars.
There we go. Token wars. So we have the explosion and then the wars. I love that. Okay. So that's awesome. So thank you so much. So everybody, that is Gabriel Cardona of Bitcoin.com. Everyone check out what he is doing. Make sure to also check out the event at Wyoming that just happened, see all the recaps and what went on. Gabriel, is there anything you want to plug before we check out?
Yeah, go to developer.bitcoin.com. That is the project that I lead, developer services. We have SDKs and cloud services and a wallet. Basically, we want to empower developers to change the world with Bitcoin Cash, and we want to take you from idea to application 10 times faster than the competition. So developer.bitcoin.com. I am CG Cardona on Twitter and Telegram, and then Gabriel@bitcoin.com. So if you're doing something amazing and you're trying to change the world in a big way with Bitcoin Cash and I can help set it off, hit me up.
There we go. Stay spicy, everyone.